All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College World podcast. Today, me and Nick are in 2023 preview and prediction for the UCLA Bruins. Looking at this coaching staff, Chip Kelly enters his sixth season, 27-29 record overall, 17-8 over the last two seasons, starting to finally get this team in the victory circle. Danton Lane will take over at defensive coordinator. Last 2 years as Ravens safety coach due to Billy McGovern's passing back in May due to cancer. Bruins will be playing with some heavy hearts on defense this season. Outside of that, the biggest headline is they're looking for their first crown in the conference since 1998 before bolting to the Big Ten. You look at this offense, Nick, it was a pretty flawless unit a season ago. Great dual-threat quarterback in Dorian Thompson-Robinson led to this team being top 10 in numerous categories. Fourth nationally in yards per game, eighth in points, sixth in rushing. They had everything. This was a really good unit that really produced. You look at what they did in the portal. They lost 3 players. They added 9. They really attacked it this year. They lost to DTR and Zach Charbonnet. So, they lose their top passer, their top 2 rushers. They also lose Jake Bobo, who's their top pass catcher from a season ago. They only return 3 starters on this side of the ball. They lose both guards, and they also see a new face at left tackle. You look at who they added. You look at Colin Schlee, comes over from Kent State. Creative with angles, good on the move, and athletic, willing runner at the quarterback position. Always in a throw-ready position. Crafty, savvy player at 6'3", 213. Really good fit for this offense. A good arm, not a great one. We'll get too antsy with the feet at times. Him and Dante Moore will battle with Ethan Garbers for the quarterback starting position. Moore, a 5-star. They flipped late in the cycle. Tough in the pocket. Good touch and understands control. Throws his wide receivers open. He has enough mobility along with some elite accuracy. The velocity needs some help, but he is a hard worker. I think they have 2 very sound options here at quarterback. I think Schlee's going to get the start early on in the year. If it doesn't appear Chip Kelly's made a decision, who are you leaning towards this season getting the nod at quarterback, the veteran or the 5-star true freshman?
I think the 5-star true freshman has the best opportunity to start here, and I think that is a gamble from UCLA and Chip Kelly. But given the state of this program last season in the Pac-12 before bolting for the Big Ten, I think they might take a gamble here and go with Dante Moore. A late flip in the cycle, very late in the cycle. It looked like he was going to commit elsewhere. Very highly coveted player, extremely talented, true freshman 5-star. You gotta love what you see with Moore. 6'3", 210, same size as Colin Schlee. Of course, Schlee has the benefit of playing at Kent State, so he does have that experience under his belt. He had a pretty good year in 2022 with Kent State. 2,000 yards passing, 13 touchdowns, 5 interceptions for the Golden Flash. So certainly you would expect him to be the starter, but I feel like there's just going to be a wild card here with UCLA. I think Dante Moore is going to get the start early on, the 5-star true freshman, and jump in there and going to give an opportunity to show what he can do and show why he flipped late in the cycle to join UCLA.
I believe Moore was committed to Oregon and actually flipped on the day of the early signing period. Pretty sure that's what happened there. Schlee, I just think he's a pretty ideal replacement for DTR, as is Carson Steele for Zach Charbonnet. This guy, 6', 225, hard to bring down, does a good job sidestepping defenders, good balance to match an impressive stop-start ability, good vision, great strength. He's a pure bulldozer, has enough speed to win on the edge. That's pretty similar to that of Zach Charbonnet. I think that this backfield, they're going to be just fine because Keegan Jones is also back. But that 1-2 punch of DTR and Steele is a big reason why this offense was able to flourish so much, Nick. And I think Schlee and Steele matched together is probably going to be the best way to kind of replicate that from a season ago.
I think he's a great player to have in Steele. Very nice player, 6', 225. I think it's a great size for a running back. Really talented player who's jumping into this offense and has a lot to do. TJ Harden as well returns. He had 325 yards on the ground and 2 scores. So that's a nice 1-2 punch that they have. Harden was a true freshman this past season, so he returns, having more experience under his belt. And they bring in a guy like Steele out of the portal, who I think is a fantastic back, who's got a nice set of skills and good speed on him, and the size is fantastic.
You look at the receiving core, coming into last season, this was not a very good, pass catching group. Charbonnet ends the year as the 4th leading pass catcher in terms of yards. He was 3rd in reception, so they certainly gave him a healthy workload, kind of because they had no choice. Jake Bobo really ended up being a saving grace for them. But they made some work this offseason to better refine this room. A few in-conference transfers. J. Michael Sturvant, who was great for Cal, was a redshirt freshman, 6'3", 205, showcasing some good physicality. Kyle Ford made some good plays for the Trojans. He makes the jump for the crosstown rival here and the Bruins. The 5'9", 175 Casimir Allen. He was as expected, a great underneath weapon. That yards per catch certainly needs a spike. Logan Loya, Titus Mokia, both caught a few balls each. Still, this isn't the deepest of wide receiving rooms, Nick. They certainly made an evident approach to try and improve it with Sturvant and then Kyle Ford. I think this is a solid group, nothing too crazy. I think with the loss of DTR, though, these guys are going to have to step up a little bit more this year. What are your thoughts on this receiving group?
It's a very bit of a shallow receiving group than Cam Brown. is a good player that they return at the wide receiver Z role. 362 yards receiving for him, 15.1 yards per catch, and 3 scores for him. Titus Mokia as well, 290 yards receiving, 17.1 and 1 catch for him. Not a bad player to return. Logan Loya at the slot, he's a good wide receiver. He had 3 scores this past season, 284 yards receiving, 15.8 yards per catch. They made some work in the portal. They added some pieces in here that add speed to it. So I think this is not a bad unit. I think it's got some room to improve. Kyle Ford jumping over from USC, also a decent player. This is a decent unit. There's some talent here, certainly.
You know, the offensive line, this is a big focal point, kind of an underrated one that is for the Bruins a season ago. They had 5 seniors up front. They really played with a lot of physicality, kind of paved the way for this, ground game before-ish. Condre Counta, he arrives from Old Dominion. He's going to slot in at left tackle. He's allowed 20-plus pressures each of the last 3 seasons. That's not great. 6'6", 309. He's got some nice size. Added Spencer Holstage from Purdue. He was an elite pass blocker this past season for Jeff Brom's crew. He's going to stay at his natural position of left guard. Duke Clemens, he was a great center for the Bruins in all areas. They're very glad to have him back. Jake Wiley, he was poor for Colorado. He's going to be the presumable right guard. Garrett DiGregorio back at right tackle. He allowed 37 pressures, one of the nation's highest marks. Physicality is, again, the name of the game for Kelly. But there's more bad than good here for this offensive line. Good bit of turnover here, Nick. Might hold them back. What are your expectations?
There is a lot of turnover here. 3 players portal on the offensive line concerns me. You got Duke Clemens at center, a good leader, nice senior leader, certainly a nice thing to have. Good player, very well rounded. I think it's just you see the transfer portal sort of revamp on the offensive line. You're bringing in 3 pieces there. The entire left side is going to be a new pieces on the left side, which I think is concerning. Coda, he lives from Old Dominion, just not great in there, but he's a good size for him. Holstage from Purdue, good pass blocker, so I think that's solid to have. I get a little concerned about this offensive line. I think it certainly is one of the weaker parts of this offense. I think it's slightly concerning.
Yeah, the turnover up front is certainly worrisome, but I think this offense is going to be just fine. A- for me. I like what they have at quarterback. Most times when you have a battle coming into the season, that's not always great, but this one's a pretty calm battle, Nick, between Shield. I think it's a really good fit for this offense, and if he doesn't pan out, get a incoming 5-star to take the reins of the offense. I like Carson Steele. I think that's also an ideal replacement for Zach Charbonnet. And I think the receiving room certainly boosted themselves up a good bit this season. So A- for me. I think they're really going to be right around that 35 to 38 point per game mark. So not much fall off is expected. I do think the run per game numbers will take a bit of a dive, but if they don't, wouldn't be shocked one bit. But certainly try to be 4th again in yards per game. Certainly going to be a tough, tall task. Well, what's your rating for them? A- for me.
I think a B+ for this offense. This has got a good receiving core that has a lot of talent that could certainly break out. I like the running back room. I think Steele's a great pickup from the portal. I think both quarterbacks give this team an opportunity to win early on. I'm just wary of an offense that plugs in so many different pieces, and the turnover is certainly worrying for me. A B+ what I'm going to give this offense.
Look at the UCLA defense. This is a unit I expected to get burned by numerous times last year, and it didn't always happen. In the Utah game, they were able to play quite well, at least early in that one, so their offense could kind of put it away. Against Washington, I thought they'd be a lot worse, and they did still give up 416, but they're playing from behind. The Huskies were in that contest, kind of ran up some yardage there. This defense certainly played very well in the first half of the year, Nick. They ended up losing to Oregon on the road, 29 points per game. They're really sturdy against the run. I think that's the biggest part of this defense. It's really going to flourish. They do return 8 starters. Gabriel Murphy, great quickness off the snap, has great power matched with violent hands, good in pursuit, good flexibility off the edge. His twin brother, Grayson Murphy, these guys arrived from North Texas a season ago. He showcases a high-level spin move, good awareness when tracking the ball carrier, high motor, and does well setting the edge. He's a physical ball player. These guys are so much twins that they're the exact same size as 6'3", 263. That is pretty odd. On the interior, Jay Twai wasn't all that great, but he's 6'3", 325 with some good experience. Gary Smith, he was an elite run defender for the Bruins at 6'2", 320. David Magna, he was quite good also, 6'4", 315. Keanu Williams, a 300-pounder from Oregon, was good in his few snaps for the Ducks a season ago. They also returned veteran Carl Jones. He's back. He can come off the edge of his hand in the dirt or be an outside linebacker. When you look at this defensive line, a lot of people are saying it's one of the top 10s nationally, and I think it certainly is, led by the size on the interior and the Murphy twins off the edge.
This is a good unit. There is some serious, nice production here. And I think when you have the Murphy twins, they're coming off the edge. They're very talented, Grayson and Gabriel Murphy. Gabe Murphy, he had 38 total tackles this past season, 40 tackles for loss, 1.5 tackles for sacks for him. When you look at Grayson Murphy, he had 9 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, 26 total tackles for him. 2 good pieces to have on the defensive edge. I think this is a solid unit. There is some nice production here overall. I think you look at some of these guys, they have not a total, like a guy like Gary Smith, he could certainly break out. He only played in 9 games. He had 18 total tackles this past season. Overall, this is a nice unit. They made some work in the portal as well, adding a few pieces here and there. Jaitola as well has got some good experience. Carl Jones returning good in his hand in the dirt. So this is a nice unit that has some nice talent.
I mean, there's only a handful of games they struggled in last year against the run. Oregon had their way with them. Pittsburgh in the bowl game did pretty well. South Alabama, they really kept that game close with their ground game. And then Utah, they had 192 and 3 scores. But if you remember early on in that game, UCLA had a lot of great timely stops on first and second down. Really forced this ground game into, them to really throw the ball. They couldn't really run the ball like they wanted to. They couldn't play from ahead. So I thought they did very good. So sometimes the stat sheet can certainly be misleading. I thought, in terms of timely stops, they did very well in that area. Look at the linebacking core. Latu, he hadn't played ball since 2019 for Washington. He was an elite pass rusher this past season. Exceptional quickness, nice length. The hands, were very good. He has a variety of different moves. Need a little more twitch along with some more strength to potentially work his way into a high-end draft selection at 6'4", 265. But the raw traits are certainly there. Looking at the rest of this group, Darius Mosau, coming over from Hawaii, didn't have anywhere near the production that he did with the Rainbow Warriors in 2021, but he was a force nonetheless. Certainly had struggles versus the run and being as a consistent tackler, but he was an efficient pass rusher when unleashed. Bryant Slaughter wasn't good at all. John Vaughns was a very poor tackler. So weak side backer needs some help. Oli Adijo transfers in from Cal. So some solid experience over the past 2 seasons for him. Slightly above average performer. I think in terms of Maasu and Latu, you have some nice linebackers here. The rest of the group certainly very questionable.
Latia Latu is a fantastic player. 36 total tackles, 12.5 tackles for loss, 10.5 sacks. By far your leading sack getter there. Fantastic numbers on linebacker. Darius Masu as well. Good player. 91 total tackles. Led the team. Nice to return your top leading tackler. 3 tackles for loss plus 2 picks for him. JoJo Vaughn's another guy with 2 picks. Good getting his hand up. 5 pass blocks for him. 53 total tackles for him. Bryant Strover, 22 total tackles for him. So this is not a bad unit. I think there's a lot of talent here. I like what I see with this unit. I think when you return your top returning tackler, it's fantastic. And you return a guy in Latu who had double-digit sacks and double-digit tackles for loss. Very nice numbers to return.
Looking at the secondary, as expected, this unit was a big liability for them in the back end. 118th against the pass. And honestly, I thought they would have been a lot worse, Nick. I was not eyeing them one bit. They had no good players, it seemed. Outside of Devin Kirkwood, they didn't have much depth one bit. And I think this year it's going to be a different story. Jalen Davies wasn't all that bad in coverage. He was a more than willing run defender. John Humphrey certainly had his struggles, though. He allowed the most coverage yards of any DB. He's back again to hopefully have a better season. Devin Kirkwood, struggled a good bit down the stretch, but as a player that's been really good at times during his first 2 seasons, a former high-end recruit. Veteran Alex Johnson, he was quite solid for them in the slot. Kenny Churchill, he struggled at safety when he was on the field. They do have Jordan Anderson from Bowling Green. He was a great player for them. Insane versatility. They used him everywhere, hoping he can provide a boost here for the Bruins. I see vast improvements for this defense. They have a lot more experience than they did a season ago. I think Anderson's going to come over. He's going to make a big impact in this conference. And I think you're going to see some growth again in Jalen Davies' game. They're a big liability last year. I think they're going to crack maybe the top 80 this year in passing yards per game. I think they're going to be a lot better behind a pass rush that's going to lead the way for them, make things a lot easier.
Certainly like to see improvements out of the secondary. I think there are potential improvements here. Churchwell, not a bad player, 47 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, liability in coverage. John Humphrey as well, liability in coverage, 39 total tackles for him. Jalen Davies, 32 total tackles, but 3 interceptions for him, 3 pass breakups, plus a forced fumble. Good numbers out of him. Devin Kirkwood, 27 total tackles, limited appearances, 4 pass breakups. This is a decent unit. I think they do have some nice production. I certainly think they can crack the top 100, like you said. That number of 273 will certainly drop this year. This is a decent secondary unit.
I think my grade's a little too high here. B+ for a unit that was not good. Almost gave up 30 points per game a season ago. But I love what they have on the D-line. Latu, again, one of the nation's top pass rushers. And I think the secondary led by Jordan Anderson, who arrives from the Orange. He's going to, lead to vast improvements in the back end. I think we're going to see this team that's also, again, playing with some heavy hearts for Bill McGovern. B+ for me. I think that's probably going to be way too high for you, Nick. I just see a lot of different factors here leading to a big-time season for the Bruins on this side of the ball.
I think a B is more where this defense is. I don't think it's too high at a B+. I think a B is kind of the right range. The secondary should improve. I worry about the linebacking core. There is some nice hitters there, some talented players, but I just worry about the production numbers staying where they were. The defensive line's fantastic, though. I think they can get after the quarterback. As long as this pass defense can find a pulse in the secondary and get some more interceptions and some pass breakups, this will be a very good unit.
Looking at the schedule preview and prediction, the offense is an interesting unit. They lose the dual threat in DTR, but they have some intriguing options at quarterback. The run game is led by a very similar back in Carson Steele. Great work in the portal to find similar players to that of the stars that departed up front for them. The offensive line has some turnover, but really just need to stay the same in terms of physicality. Defenses, a really talented front seven, very happy with the D-line. Linebacking group gets experience back. And again, I'm hopeful the secondary can showcase improvements to match an already tough run defense. This is a very underrated team that make waves in the Pac-12, Nick. I wasn't very happy with them coming into last year. I think I picked them to win 6 or 7 games, maybe even worse than that. I was not high on the Bruins one bit. Really thought their defense would hurt them, but I didn't think their offense would have enough effectiveness. I was a little bit wrong on that one because the defense certainly struggled in their losses, but the offense was just a tough out all year long. 8-4 for me. I'm higher on this team than I was a season ago. I think this is a better roster, top to bottom, even though they lose DTR and Charbonnet. How is that possible? You can lose 2 elite players like that, and they can potentially be better.
Well, it certainly helps when you have a schedule that's favorable like this. At Utah, at USC are really the tough games here. They avoid a trip to Oregon or avoid Oregon at all, which is quite favorable. Yeah, those are 2 tough road games, but you look at the schedule top to bottom, it's pretty easy. At Oregon State, at Arizona, at Stanford, at San Diego State, not too bad in terms of road draws. The home splits are fantastic. Colorado, Arizona State, Cal, Washington State, all winnable games, non-conference, not really that tough of NDSU, or SDSU, sorry, and Coastal Carolina plus NC Central. I think this is a good team that has a nice potential two different options at quarterback that could be very, very good for this team. I think they'll go with the 5-star true freshman, but overall, I think it's a talented offense. The defense has some nice pieces, and they return some good production. I think the secondary can improve. This team, I think, is 8-4 range. I think Chip Kelly, that's kind of right where they are with this team. They're not going to, blow the doors off in the Pac-12 in their last season there, but they'll be a steady bowl team. They'll get to a bowl game. They'll probably win a bowl game, and then they transition to the Big Ten. It's a complete total shift for this UCLA team. Interesting to see what they do in the offseason after that.
Don't sleep on the Chanticleer. September 2nd, Grayson McCall and CCU come to town. Maybe they can take advantage of a defense that, again, did struggle at times last year. At San Diego State, that could be an underrated game. I have them losing 4 road games at Utah, Oregon State, USC, and Arizona. I think those are going to be very tough contests for this ball club. Plus money on the over 8.5. I'm going to stay away from it, Nick. I don't see this team winning 9 games, even though I do think they're a big sleeper in this conference. And I wouldn't be shocked if they win it one bit. I said the same thing about Oregon State, where they had the draw that they could potentially sneak into the playoffs. That's how good of a draw they have. I think that's certainly the notion here in this conference, that a team that's really probably not that good, maybe like TCU from a season ago, could win their conference and sneak in due to the virtue of the rest of the conference not exactly being up to par.
Certainly possible they could run away with this, considering that they have their toughest games on the road, which will certainly bolster a resume if they were to get to that point. I just don't see with this team. I think 8-4 is certainly the max. I think 7-5 is also possible. That over 8.5 just not really working for me. I think you got to stay with the under here. I do think it's interesting. It's plus money, but you do have to stay with the under here for me. This is a good team, and Chip Kelly's a good coach who's kind of revived his career here out west in LA. But I think this is a tough draw in terms of the schedule. I think 8-4 is right where they're going to be.
Very interested to see how the Bruins do this year. That's going to be for today's episode. As always, Nick, appreciate you joining me.
Absolutely. Looking forward to the Pac-12 season.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.